The headlines today include the U.S. Secretary of State has pressed Ethiopia to address an impending humanitarian disaster within the Tigray region. Clashes have triggered by the attack on the Muslims in Gondar have also spread to other parts of Ethiopia. And this ongoing siege currently on Tigray has increased women's vulnerability to sexual exploitation. The U.S. Secretary of State has pressed Ethiopia to address what he called an impending humanitarian disaster within the Tigray region. In a phone call with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Anthony Blinken voiced his concern about the deteriorating humanitarian as well as human rights crisis within the country, including the rising fear of famine. The spokesperson of State Department, Ned Price, had this to say.
The Secretary did have an opportunity today to speak to Prime Minister Abiy. The message he conveyed, and we read that out, but the message he conveyed is one that we have made at many levels in recent days. We remain, of course, committed to building an enduring partnership with the Ethiopian people, and we remain committed to the territorial integrity and unity of Ethiopia. All that said, we are gravely concerned about the deteriorating humanitarian crisis in Tigray and the reports of human rights abuses, violations, and atrocities that have emanated from there. This administration has encouraged international partners, including the AU and regional partners, to work with us to address the crisis in Tigray, including through action at the UN and other relevant bodies.
The Secretary of State also asked Eritrea to pull out its forces in full effect and verifiable manner as well. Blinken said forces from Eritrea and the neighboring region of the Amhara are contributing towards the growing humanitarian disaster and committing atrocities and human rights abuses of the unimaginable manner. Clashes triggered by the attack on the Muslims in Gondar has currently spread to other parts of Ethiopia. The attack on Muslims in the Amhara region has today spread to Debark, bringing the total number of mosques burned down to more than 10 total. This has created outrage among Muslims throughout the country, leading to attacks on churches in Warabi town and the southern nations and nationalities and people's regional state as well. Muslim communities in Ethiopia blame the Amhara vigilante group Fano for orchestrating the attacks, adding that the Abiy Ahmed's regime is also fanning these religious clashes. You're currently tuned into TMH English News, and we'll be right back after this short break.
We used to have a family, school, hospital, food, peace and freedom, but now we have none of them.
I don't know where my parents are.
I really miss my sister. Where is she?
I want to know where my dad is.
I miss my mom. I don't see my brother. So, people of the world, we are part of you. Please, we need your help. We have a dream. We want to make the world a better place for the people like us. Please, give us your hand. We are Tigrayan people. We are part of you. Act now.
Eritrea's Foreign Minister Osman Sahle claimed Eritrea remains #1 target of the West's pressure. The Eritrean Foreign Minister made the remark in a discussion with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during his visit to Moscow. Here's what he had to say.
The masters of the dying unipolar world order are working in overdrive to destabilize and bring under their full control each and every country, as well as systematically undermining meaningful cooperation among them. In this overall scheme, Eritrea remains this #1 target.
His host, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, echoed similar criticism of the West during a joint press briefing. And here's what he had to say about that.
We have paid great attention to the unacceptance of negative influence on our practical cooperation of the unilateral illegitimate sanctions which have been imposed by the so-called collective West. And they have turned it into the main, or rather the only tool of their foreign policy.
The presidential advisor, Yamana Gabraab, was also a member of the Eritrean delegation who was a part of this two-day visit in Russia. The ongoing siege on Tigray has increased women's vulnerability to sexual exploitation. An article published by Addis Standard details multifaceted effects of the systematic destruction of Tigray's health services as well as the siege on women. It particularly highlights how the ongoing siege has increased women's vulnerability to sexual exploitation. The article indicated women and IDPs especially are at risk. An ethnic cleansing campaign in western Tigray has led to a massive number of displacement and persons, of which close to half of them are in fact women. None of these IDPs are able to access food or even other essential goods. What little was available and many IDPs chose to sell in exchange for food in the early days of the siege. The article indicated that now women are being forced into prostitution and child labor, simply the order of the day. Adding the lack of or separated sleeping corridors for women and children in those overcrowded IDP camps is sure to increase women's vulnerability to sexual violence. And again, according to the article, the impact the destruction of health facilities has had on women and the capacity to access sexual and reproductive health care is quite possibly one of the most aggressive in reversing gains for women's reproductive rights in this 21st century. Referring to the implication of discontinuation of telecommunications and banking services on women's reproductive health, the article indicated that many women are going without medical treatment due to the financial reasons or simply because they're not able to reach any health professionals in time. And added also, neither aid organizations nor government are able to track or formulate and respond to the needs currently on the ground. We're going to take another short break and then we'll be right back after this.
From Tigray Tigray.
عارف
I need food, not warm. I need medicine, not warm. I need life, not to die. Please stand with me. Please stand with Tigray Tigray. Thank you.
Healthcare workers have said that Tigray's health system has totally collapsed. Doctors told the New Humanitarian that most patients are currently dying at home because of the lack of access and the health facilities are just not functional and ready for patient care. Timnit Bayru will present the details.
Health workers in Tigray told the New Humanitarian by phone that shortages are so acute they are using expired drugs to treat chronic conditions, while tens of thousands of patients with diabetes, cancer, and HIV haven't been treated in months. Patients are being asked to bring old clothes with them into the hospital for surgeons to use as gauze during operations. Test tubes, surgical gloves, and air tubes are all being reused, and there's not enough detergent to wash soiled hospital bed linen. A doctor at the flagship Aidar Hospital in the capital Mekelle likened Tigray's health system to Swiss cheese, with most key components missing, from medicines to spare parts for vital equipment. Health workers are using warm salt water to wash wounds. Clinics receive erratic supplies of power, and a lack of fuel is forcing pregnant women to walk or be carried on stretchers for days to health posts in order to deliver their babies. Most new mothers are delivering at home, alone, meaning thousands of women are likely dying from complications, health workers said. This isn't like the 21st century anymore. It's like the 16th or 17th. Meanwhile, doctors haven't been paid in months and are also struggling to feed themselves. As a result, stories of nurses and surgical residents fainting from hunger during procedures are commonplace. The whole system has totally collapsed, he added. We are trying to do our best to serve our patients with what we have available, but things are getting worse and worse every day. A survey by the Regional Health Bureau said 90% of Tigray's 40 hospitals and roughly 1,000 smaller clinics were damaged, while medics have described watching Eritrean troops cart away valuable medical equipment using trucks and even helicopters. Access to Tigray has been restricted since the TPLF recaptured the region in June of last year, with all communication links, roads, and banking services cut. This prompted the EU's top humanitarian, Yanis Lenarčič, to accuse Addis Ababa of laying siege to the region. A physician on the maternity ward of Aidar Hospital in the regional capital Mekelle has seen several pregnant women develop complications after enduring long journeys to the hospital due to the lack of transport. One 20-year-old woman lost one of the twins she was carrying and developed a fistula after her neighbors carried her for 18 hours on a wooden stretcher to Aidar. Another woman, aged 31, died because there was no blood to give her for a transfusion after she bled heavily during labor. A third, who was 28, died from an easily treatable infection. These cases are the tip of the iceberg, the physician said. Most of them are dying at home. This is because of a lack of access and because health facilities aren't functional. These cases are the tip of the iceberg, the physician said. Most of them are dying at home. This is because of lack of access and because health facilities aren't functional. It can be easily prevented for sure. Power cuts have also caused interruptions to the oxygen supply at Aidar that have killed dozens of people since the start of the war. The health center's oxygen plant has caught fire twice in the last month because staff aren't able to maintain it due to the lack of spare parts. We are pushing it too hard, another doctor said. Sometimes it stops for a few weeks, and when that happens, we have to beg for oxygen from factories in the city. The hospital's life support machines are backed up by a generator. On several occasions, nurses and sometimes even the relatives of patients have had to operate breathing apparatus with their own hands due to the lack of power outages. The hospital's life support machines are backed up by a generator, but on several occasions, nurses and sometimes even the relatives of patients have had to operate breathing apparatus with their own hands due to power outages. When this happens, most of the time they die. This is very traumatic, the doctor said.
Welcome back. You've been tuned into TMH Daily English News. For more updates, make sure to follow us on our social medias accounts as well as YouTube. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.